Good evening. Everybody sounds like they've got the Christmas spirit. At this time, I'd like to call the Lee County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for joining us as we have our last meeting, hopefully, of the year. Hard to believe 2019 has gone by very quickly. At this time, if you'll join me, we'll just have a moment of silence and our pledge, please. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, are there any additional items to be added to the agenda? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Approval of consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Okay, any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, at this time, we go into kind of a bittersweet part of our agenda tonight. The first item is a resolution and a little discussion to honor the service of our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. John Payne, who my whole life when I think Parks and Recreation, I think of Mr. Payne, and he started very, very young, so very, very young. So at this time, John, if you and your family want to come to the podium, and I will read the resolution, and then if you want to say a few words, and then I think Ms. Brown wants a picture or two. So at this time, the resolution honoring John Payne on his retirement. Whereas John Payne began working with Lee County on March 3rd, 1992 as recycling coordinator, and whereas John Payne was promoted on November 1st, 1995 to Recreation Program Superintendent, and whereas John Payne has served as the Lee County Director of Parks and Recreation for over 20 years since he was promoted to the position on April 1st, 1998, and whereas John Payne has been instrumental in the development and construction of the Tramway Road Park Complex, including securing $750,000 in part of grant funds in support of the project, and whereas John Payne has helped develop Sandley Park and Nature Center into a regional attraction, offering a variety of recreational opportunities, including a popular mountain bike trail that attracts riders from across the state, and whereas John Payne has been responsible for numerous upgrades and renovations to park properties and facilities, most notably the rebuilding of the Sandley Park Nature Center after a fire destroyed the original building in November 2014, and whereas John Payne is retiring as Director of Parks and Recreation on January 1st, 2020, and whereas it is the desire of the Lee County Board of Commissioners to recognize the achievements of John Payne and to express their appreciation for his dedicated service and contributions to Lee County. Now therefore be it resolved by the Lee County Board of Commissioners that it congratulates John Payne for his many accomplishments as Director of Parks and Recreation and wishes for his continued success in all his future endeavors. Adopted the 16th day of December 2019. Thank you, John. Yeah, I'll take the pictures and then I'll let you.
Okay.
Because we have one more thing.
All right, where you want
Where
to?
do you want?
don't we do it in front?
Right here.
Your family can.
So the, yeah, no, wait, no.
Come on, smile for the camera.
Wait, Jamie, before you do that, also as a token of our appreciation from the board.
It's not an alarm clock, is it?
It is. Perfect. No, I really don't think I have an alarm on this at all.
That's
It,
great.
it says, John Payne, in appreciation for your outstanding leadership and service to the citizens of Lee County Board of Commissioners, December 16th, 2019. So, you're welcome, you're welcome. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
It is a little bittersweet.
I know.
I won't miss some of the hassles, but I will miss the people. The Board of Commissioners, for their support over these many years that I've been fortunate enough to be the director. To Dr. Crompton and a wonderful staff, Lee County government. I mean, we support each other, and we even cross over and have some good connections with the city, don't we, Karen? So it's always a good thing, and it is bittersweet, because I love this place. I grew up here, raised my family here, who I'm really proud of. My son Josh, his wife Whitney, my wife Terry, my son Justin. Justin is Justin, so I'm not sure where he is. But thank you all so much for your wonderful support. I couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, John.
Thank you, sir.
We've been through a lot.
We have.
That's right.
You and I, you started about 2 years before I did, and you and I had a conversation before I got the position.
That's right.
And I appreciate the wise counsel.
So we'll do one picture. If you
Okay.
want to stand in the middle. Yeah. No, here. Like this?
There we go. How's that?
No, you're going to present him with the clock. So I can get
Okay.
the nice-
Okay.
Why don't you stand next to your wife?
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Does anybody remember the Virginia reel from elementary school?
Commissioners like to stand up back.
Oh, let's ask Amy first.
Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Smith, can you step to the
I
mic?
did that intentionally.
I want to see you.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
there, you have the font.
Good luck, John.
Thank you, sir. If you were to take those, I'm going to stay with these. If y'all are going to go. Okay?
I'm just gonna, what do you want? Yeah.
Whatever
You
was
know,
out
there's
there.
something poetic about that.
If I go in disguise, I leave my hat at home. Nobody recognizes me without the hat.
Amy, we need a motion for the last resolution number.
Right.
So
So moved?
moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Can I just do this from here? Can I hear you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You're the chair.
I don't want them coming out from the back. Okay, our next resolution is to honor Ms. Kate Rumley on her retirement. Whereas Kate Rumley has led the Brick Capital Community Development Corporation for over 20 years as executive director, assuming the role in February 1997, and whereas the Brick Capital Community Development Corporation has a 9-member board of directors whose membership has changed throughout Kate Rumley's tenure and has provided the opportunity for her to exhibit her great leadership and consensus building skills, managing changing board dynamics, including with current board members Reverend Freeman Brooks, Bill Wilson, Milton Birch, James French, Brenda Johnson, Terry McMillan, Margaret Murkison, and Brenda Williams. And whereas under Kate Rumley's leadership, the Brick Capital Community Development Corporation has strived to create new affordable housing stock in our community for low-income families, provide home ownership, education, and support for first-time homebuyers, and strengthen the sense of community and improve the quality of life for the citizens of Lee County. And whereas under Kate Rumley's direction, Brick Capital Community Development Corporation has built 63 affordable single-family homes and 63 multifamily apartments throughout Lee County. And whereas Kate Rumley's vision to restore the W.B. Wickers School, a historic Rosenwald school, became a catalyst for the revitalization of the surrounding neighborhood. And whereas Kate Rumley assisted with the construction of a new 29-bed domestic violence shelter and offices for Haven of Lee County. And whereas under the leadership of Kate Rumley, Brick Capital Community Development Corporation has developed strong partnerships with government, community organizations, private banks, and lenders, and the business community that have been instrumental to the success of the organization in achieving their mission and goals. And whereas it is the desire of the Lee County Board of Commissioners to recognize the achievements of Kate Rumley and to express their appreciation for her dedicated service and contributions to Lee County, now therefore be it resolved that the Lee County Board of Commissioners congratulates Kate Rumley for her many accomplishments as Executive Director and wishes her continued success in all her future endeavors. Dated the 16th day of December of 2019. Thank you, Kate. I think that would be appropriate.
So, Karen, Jane, Margaret,
Bill, board members, pictures, Terry.
Terry,
You just have to let it run on
Terry,
its own.
yeah. Terry, I want you too.
No, let you say a few words after Jamie gets the pictures and
Okay.
you want to introduce him, that's fine.
This is like everybody to do like a.
Okay.
Would the commissioners like to?
The commissioners, yeah, they're coming, they're luncheon. Ms. Brown will tell us how we need to be here.
I'm trying not to get the. Okay, ready? Ariana, can you step to the? You're right.
Come on, John, she wants you in the picture too.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I can speak loud enough right here. If it weren't for all these people that came up, and many, 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 many more, and the commissioners, and our manager, I don't know why you didn't want him to.
I'm not elected.
Any of this work, not one bit of this work without you. So thank you, my special partner and sister in crime, Karen Kennedy, who was always beside me, and all my board members, Bill, and Margaret. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. And for those of you who don't know, I just would like to say that this other gentleman that I asked to come up is the new executive director of Brick Capital Community Development Corporation. Could you stand up just a minute, Terry, because I want them to see you. Yeah, because we've been working together for 2 months, and he is fantastic. I could not be happier leaving this organization with someone like Perry. It's just great. And I thank all of you too. The community made a big difference in my life, and By the way, I didn't grow up here, but I'm staying.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
There were too many people in my way.
Man, you stand. Keep paying your taxes.
It's okay, it's just water.
We are, as Kate said, she's not from here, and when we had her retirement celebration last week, I learned a lot about Kate I didn't know. I thought I knew her pretty well. But as I said there that day, we are blessed that you chose Lee County to spend the last 22 years of your life, and we're glad you decided to stay. We are the ones that are blessed for you being here. I need a motion to adopt the resolution at this time. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we have the public hearing on the proposed economic development project known as Project Jupiter. And welcome, Mr. Bob Joyce. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd just like to, Madam Chairman, take a moment of personal privilege and say that without folks like Kate and John, my job would be a lot more difficult.
Absolutely,
And,
yes.
You all set the tone and the policy, and you got to have folks carry it out and make this a great place to live, and they do that. So I'd like to add a word of thanks. We are here tonight to discuss an economic development project with you known as Project Jupiter. It is a life science company. This company has indicated they will invest $126 million in our community, creating 196 new jobs at an average wage of $88,900. That would make the annual payroll for this company around $17.4 million. That would be one of the largest payrolls of any company in our community. This company first visited our community in May of 2019. We developed this lead from a conversation that Michael had at the Site Selectors Guild meeting that he went to back in March, along with our partners at the North Carolina Biotech Center, who went out to visit this company, and we are very pleased that we have continued to stay in the running. We reviewed this project with you in closed session in June. We made an initial incentive offer. We were notified that we have made the finals in July, and we reviewed it again with you and revised our incentive offer. This is still a competitive project, and our goal tonight is to answer questions as we can, of course, on a confidential project. Complete this hearing and ask for your vote to approve this incentive at the next meeting, January 6th. And then we would present this offer to the company. The city will hold their hearing and their vote as part of their part of the local incentive on January the 7th. And if we are successful and the company chooses us, we believe that that decision will be made in the early part of 2020. So with that, I'll step back and let you open the hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joyce. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on Project Jupiter. If anyone would like to speak on behalf of the project, for the project, come to the podium, please.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. I'm Kim Sutton. I am former president and owner of Red Wolf Company here in Sanford, former chair and current board member of the Sanford Area Growth Alliance. And so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for considering Project Jupiter, and want to, I guess, publicly comment about the importance of the mechanisms that we use to try and attract businesses to come to our community. It's really, I think, important for everyone to understand that it's not that we are writing a check to these corporations who are choosing to come to our community and invest, as Bob said, close to 200 jobs $88,000, huge payroll, $126 million in investment, adding to the tax base. It's not a check that we're writing, it's a rebate that you're providing on taxes that company will pay in the first 5 years. That's a difference, and it should be known that it's a difference, because if that company does not come, then you will get zero. If the company comes and we give them a 70% rebate in the first year, you will get 30% of tax money to your coffers that you've not received in the past. And I think that's an important distinction to make, and an important distinction for the public to understand. Because as we try and attract these very competitive life science companies, we're building a great cluster here. It's a target industry for us. This is a huge opportunity. And all of you have been very supportive of the shell building project. Project Jupiter, as you know, would be going into Central Carolina Enterprise Park, into the shell building, which would only cement the investment that the public and you all have supported and made in that building. So I think it's really important for us to see it through, to bring these additional tax dollars to the community, to allow us to do the things that this wonderful group here does and the Parks and Recreation does. I think that's important for our community. So as a former employer who also benefited from incentives and grew my company to 65 employees and an increased tax base, I just ask you to please consider this in favor of Project Jupiter. I think it's a really important, and I think not a better holiday present could be given to the community in Lee County than this.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton.
Thanks.
Excuse me. No, she needs your address for the record. I'm sorry.
My full address or just general address?
General, yeah, general.
Just usually
address.
get an address for the record.
Moncure, North Carolina.
Thank you. Okay.
No.
Anyone else to speak for the project? Against? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Thank you very much. And we will have the vote on Project Jupiter January 6th. All right, thank you very much. All right, at this time we'll do public comments. Mr. Wayne Watson. And for the record, and I'm sorry I didn't remind Ms. Sutton, but if you'll give our clerk your address for the record.
I'm Wayne Watson. I'm a lifetime member of this community. I grew up and live at 339 Avis Ferry Road, Sanford, North Carolina, 27330. Went to Shallowell all my life, and this sports arena concerns me because of its location. One, because it's going to be hooking right behind the church with the fields and stuff like that. Two, the cost of it. There's going to have to be sewer put in. There had to be a lift station put in. They will have to backfill where he has dug out and sold to the state the dirt. And I'm not against the project itself, it's just the location. I have members in my church that go to these travel teams and stuff. It's just, and also on this site, on the Myrtle Road Poe side, there's a cemetery. And I've been told that Jimmy Lev took up the headstones because they were back there near the housing development. And the Civil War people fixed it up with a fence, and they were tearing it down and tearing his tombstones up, so he took them up. As with the project I've been in the last couple of months, these old tombstones, they don't take much abuse. Especially these old, what I call soapstones, the old ones. Thank you for the offer to listen to me.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Ms. Susan Ladati. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Susan Ladati. I live at 610 Irwin Road in Sanford, and I would like to speak on behalf of the proposed library project. I am president of the Friends of the Lee County Library, and I just wanted to say that we are 100% behind this project. We think it would be an excellent idea to have a larger facility. I know that Beth and her staff do a wonderful, wonderful job with what they have, but they are just running out of room. And we can't do programs that we would like to do just because of a lack of space. So I would urge you, when we get to that point in the agenda, to consider funding a new library. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Mr. Tim Knowles.
It's hard to come behind that.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, y'all. My name is Tim Knowles. I live at 902 McNeil Road, and I've been a resident for like 30 years. I'm glad to call Lee County my home. I just found out about the library, the $14 million. I read it in the paper the other day. I spoke with Jimmy here earlier. And today, I haven't been to the library in a long, long time. That was my original office when I first came to town. A lot of the stuff I did, now I do online. I went by the Broadway Library today, it was closed. I actually went by Sunday. You know, when I used to go to the library, it was open on 1 to 5. It's closed. I don't know why. Is it, you know, funding or what? But yet we're speaking about $14 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And it's good to have a wish list along those lines, but I also went around a place that I haven't been in a while, is the Lee County Enrichment Center. You know, if we got a burning desire to spend money, you know, that would be a good facility. I've got a lot of my customers that dance there, play cards there. It's my understanding there's 40 to 60 people that eat there on a daily basis. I encourage a lot of my customers that sit at home watching Sally Jesse Raphael, you know, go there, you know, go there. I don't know anybody, you will know somebody. It's a nice facility, and that was built in 1992, and it's definitely outgrown it. And I'm not against something like this, but you can't have everything. You can't have everything. All right? And like I said, the Broadway Library is closed. I took down a picture of the thing, the time frame, and I called another one of my customers that are really big readers, I think Menards over on Lick Creek Road, and I asked them today, when I go to their house to do service work, they've got a stack of books all the time. She tells me that they keep a good stock of the books. She said, well, Ryan's, when author Ryan was bestseller list last week, she went in and was able to pick it up. So she said, if not, there's a way that you can get the books and so on. And I just questioned that. And I also talked to Officer Cole that it turns out that we've got to have somebody in there from opening to closing time. You know, for whatever reason. There was a shooting, there was somebody with a heroin overdose, all thing, but it's like, that's not the reason to spend $14 million. There's a lot going on downtown right now, and I just think it's the wrong time to pull something like that out. Granted, there's not good parking there. Some of the money could be spent, to open up that you can get in and out. I mean, you've got a little bitty 10-foot area to get, and granted, it's hard to get, but I just question if that's the kind of money to spend at this time. To compare the Lee Enrichment Center would be a better money to spend. If you got a burning desire to spend $14 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay. At this time, we'll move on to our old business. Item 4A, a vote to transfer 1380 Hooper Street to Brick Capital Community Development Corporation. We'll let Ms. Parrish walk us through that.
Yes. You may or may not recall, but this occurred back in July of 2018. On this property, Brick Capital did submit an offer of $800 for that lot. We did advertise that in the Herald on July 5th of 2018, and there were no upset bids on the property. The property is worth $2,600. Well, that's what the tax value, excuse me. The tax value is $2,600. The amount owed was over $7,000 due to attorney fees and back taxes on it. As we were going through some of our outstanding properties, we realized that this one had never been actually transferred to Brick Capital. So before we did that, I just felt like, given the time frame of it, I just wanted to bring it back to the board just for another final approval. And I did contact Carrie with Brick Capital, and they were still interested in the property. So.
Okay.
The initial $800 bid.
And there were, like I said, we did advertise that there were no upset bids received. So, I mean, we could rebid it, but they'd have to pay advertising costs. But
Move to approve the transfer.
Okay. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, new business. Can't wait to hear this publicly. Ms. Mentor will present our 2018-19 financial statement.
Good evening.
Good evening.
At your spot, you should find a copy of our actual audit report. I apologize that we were not able to get those out to you before today, but we had to wait for the local government commission to approve them and then the auditors to be able to print them. So you'll have that at your spot, and I believe in the notebook that went out to you Friday, you'll have a copy of our presentation. First things first, Brandy Tuberville, who's with our CPA firm, Thompson Price Scott Adams and Company, is here with us tonight to give you the audit results. She has been our in-charge auditor for 5 years since we went with Thompson Price, so I'm happy to finally say she's actually got to come do the presentation with me tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to her for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and give you the actual numbers.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, thank you. As she said, I've been on the audit team since we started doing the audit. It's been five years now. So it's always a pleasure to work with Lisa and her staff. You have an awesome finance staff here. Would love to have her replicated in a lot of places.
No.
Yeah.
As she said, we performed the audit for 2019. Last year, if you'll recall, there was a finding for Medicaid, and that was cleared up this year. So you have an unmodified opinion with no findings. It's a clean report, nothing unusual. So she said she's going to have the fun of all the numbers. So I'll leave you with, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them as she continues.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Things I'll be going over with you tonight are the general fund activity, our overall fund balance position in the general fund, our debt position in regards to our financial policies, our various capital projects that we had out, going on during the fiscal year into June 30th, 2019, and then I'll finish up with a chance for you to ask questions. General fund revenues, our revenues and transfers into the general fund totaled $73,823,772. That is an increase of 6.26%, or $4,351,576 more dollars than fiscal year 2018. Just so you can see typically where our revenues come from, obviously our largest revenue sources are ad valorem taxes at 61% of our total. And then you have local option sales taxes that make up 20% for a total 81% of our revenues. Okay, breaking our revenues down by year into the different categories, you can see in every category we increased except for sales and services, and we saw a slight decline there. Not substantial, but a slight decline. Obviously, our largest increase was in the area of property taxes. We also saw a good increase in our investment earnings due to the economy, and then also having some excess cash to be able to invest. As far as property taxes go, our property tax revenues total $44,192,440, which is an increase of 4.35% from the fiscal year 2018. So some of the investments that we've been making over the years are starting to pay off for us, and we're seeing some growth after a real slow few years. Our total assessed value was $5,540,454,530, which was an increase of 4.69%. And you'll see it's broken down in the different colors, real property being the largest portion, the personal property is red, and then the greenish gold color are utilities. You know, there are a couple commissioners who like to see our real property base broken down between residential and commercial. And you'll see the red is the commercial, and we did see a large growth in our commercial percentage this year compared to what we have been seeing. Property taxes, our tax department continues to do an outstanding job on collecting our taxes. We collected over 99.15% of our levy. 99.6% if we exclude motor vehicles which the way the state does that now shows that we've collected 100%. But I will say that the state has not collected 100% of our motor vehicles. There are some outstanding, but the way we have to report it, because everything they collect, we do get, it shows us 100% for us. Our collections exceeded our budget with tax from property taxes by over $1 million this year. So again, our tax department should be commended for an outstanding effort. Sales taxes continue to grow. Our sales tax revenue totaled $14,669,199. That is $779,243 over our fiscal year 2018 budget, or a 5.61% increase. And you can see from the chart that it's going up in every category. Our Article 39 probably grew a little bit more than the Articles 40 and 42, which indicates that Lee County is faring well across compared to the state. We might be a little bit ahead of the state's overall growth last year. And I'll be reporting to you at the first meeting in January that we're continuing to see an outstanding growth in our sales tax. General fund expenditures, we'll move on. Our expenditures totaled $71,108,381, which was an increase of $2,368,878 over fiscal year 2018, or a 3.45% increase. Our three largest areas continue to be human services, public safety, and education overall. Here you can see our expenses broken down by categories for the last 5 years. We obviously, as you can see on the far right, saw a large increase in our debt service. That was the additional debt that we had brought on to build the W.B. Whipper School and to do park improvements and improvements at the courthouse. But as you can see, the only area that we saw a slight decline was in cultural and recreation expenses over the prior year. Obviously, as I said, education expenditures account for one of the largest portions of our budget, especially when we include debt service. And the largest portion of that goes to Lee County Board of Education. They accounted for 39.38% of our expenditures in 2019. Current expense was over $17 million. Capital outlay was $1.6. Our debt service for the schools accounted for $8.5 million for total expenditures related to Lee County Board of Education of $28,002,720. And you can see the breakdown of that here. And again, capital outlay does include lottery funds, and we did use a small portion of lottery funds for some projects during the fiscal year 19. CCCC accounts for another large portion of the that's a much smaller portion of the education expenditures. You can see the breakdown of the expenditures there, and that totaled $5,456,737, which was actually a 7.36% decrease from fiscal year 2018, excuse me. And that accounts for 7.67% of the general fund expenditures. That decrease that you saw was due to some expenses we incurred in moving the mobile units off the W. Whipper property out to the industrial park. So bottom line, you'll see our total revenues and total expenditures there, and our change in fund balance accounted to a positive change of $2.7 million for fiscal year 19. I do want to point out to you, though, that a little over $500,000 of that was rolled over as unspent funds that were committed on into this year, either by encumbrances that were not, things were not received prior to June 30th, or they are committed funds. We roll over a good $200,000 in social services funds that are committed to special projects, adoption enhancement and things like that. So some of that automatically was rolled over. But also having those funds on hand allowed us to do the budget amendment to be able to do the land purchase for the Project Forge incentive. So, and then we've also used $115,000 to put positions in place for environmental help to help handle the growth that we're seeing in the community. So having those positive funds does help us out. Fund balance history, you'll see here, and this graph has been modified to reflect your new policy that you, when you adjusted the fund balance policy. So you'll see here that we grew from a 21% available fund balance as percentage of expenditures to 24% at June 30th, 2019. As far as the fund balance summary goes, we have a available fund balance at June 30th, 2019 of $17,102,400. That is an increase of $2.4 million from fiscal year 2018. Now the popular question everywhere is, how do we compare to everybody else? Are we in good shape or not? So we always look at our available fund balance as a percentage of our general fund expenditures. As I pointed out to you, we're at 24%. I just attended an education seminar put on by North Carolina Cash Management Trust last week, and they went over some things for us as to how local government commission is modifying how they look at it. We've always heard the 8% rule, and that's a bare minimum. It's 1 month expenditures, and they will flat out tell you that there's lots of places that are 8%, and even that doesn't get them by from month to month. So they actually told us, they start out looking at, and we knew that they look at our peer group average, and at June 30th, 18, we were at that average for our population group was 37.72%. They went on to modify it and say what they look at as far as a minimum is really half of the 37%. And then they say, well, how much should you have, or what's your target, or how much is too much? So they've actually looked at a range of half of that percentage up to 1.5 times. So you'll see there I put our peer group normal range would be 19 to 57%. Obviously, we're in that range at 24. Your fund balance policy target range is 16 to 24. So, we're not far off on that, but we may want to look again at modifying that at some point. And obviously, we are now at the top of your target range, and you are to be commended for getting yourselves there. Okay, we'll move on to debt position. Our outstanding debt at June 30th, 2019 was $86,341,495. And you can see the breakdown of that there. Majority of our debt is in non-voter debt, but we do have the outstanding general obligation bonds that are at $20,700,000 now. Here's the breakdown of our debt by who it's for. Obviously, the majority of our debt is in the blue area. That's Lee County Board of Education at 68%. We have 27% of our debt for the community college, and then 5% is for general things, parks, a few other building renovations and things that we've done. Debt levels, we have two different things we look at in our fund balance policy, or our financial policy. Outstanding debt is at total, right now it's at 1.56% of our total assessed value. Our financial policy limits us to 2%, so we're still well under that. Our actual debt service payments are at 15.96% of general fund expenditures for fiscal year 2019. Our policy maximum is 15%. Now, when we issued the last debt, we showed you that we might be over that for a short time frame. I will also say that there are some expenses from the state, such as daycare, that used to run through us that no longer run through, which have brought down our expenditures from what we would have been using whenever we did that study, last study where we showed you we'd be there. So that should modify itself back down into the appropriate range. Any questions so far on any of that before I move into the single?
I do, just for my own understanding.
Okay.
The assessed values were greater than the tax revenue. I was just wondering how that worked out.
The assessed value is how the tax revenue is generated. It's the assessed value times the tax rate, or assessed value divided by 100 times the tax rate to get the tax revenue. Okay, and so it was a slightly bit, but our collection rate too was a little bit lower than it was last year. So that all kind of plays in together to get to the tax revenue. Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll move on into the single audit. We manage between our various departments, social services, health, senior services, and we have some other small departments that receive grant funding, also being emergency management. It's off the top of my head, also received some grant funding, solid waste also. We manage over $117,107,070 of grant funds this past year. Now, all that obviously does not run through our coffers, but we are helping making declarations or decisions as to who qualifies for a lot of that funding. We actually received $7.4 million of that, and then direct vendor payments accounted for $109 million of those dollars. The programs that were audited were Medical Assistance Program, or Medicaid, the Rural Operating Assistance Program, which was one of our transportation programs, the One North Carolina Grant, which was a pass-through of funds to Pfizer, School Nurse Funding Initiative, and a Public School Building Capital Fund, or the lottery proceeds. And as you heard Brandy say, we had no findings this year through all those funds that we managed. So our departments are to be commended for following the rules and regulations. And we'll move on into just give you a status update on our capital projects. We have a lot of them going on, and hopefully a lot of them finishing up soon. Stanley Park should be wrapping up in this fiscal year. We were holding some funds to do some better soundproofing in the big room there. So there's still about $1,200 left there. The Health Science Center, there's $251,121 left as of June 30th. That tech facility is $888,931. That is partially going to be used for the large animal facility that they're working on. So hopefully that'll be wrapping up soon. Civic Center project, there was almost $160,000 left. Main campus and the ESTC, $377,604. But I know there were a lot of smaller projects they were still trying to wrap up. And then the elementary school facility is one of the newer projects, and at June 30th, there was still $7.5 million in that fund, but there were several, I know that was really quick, right before they opened the school, but there, obviously the payments run behind, and we're holding retainage, which would have been booked against that, plus the equipment and all had not been paid for as of June 30th, and we did not have the bills for those yet. Courthouse complex, we're still at $3 million there, and park improvements, we're just under $2 million left. And hopefully those projects are going to get going here soon, and we'll be spending out some of that money before June 30th, 20 is here. And then our most recently added project, you did put $200,000 aside to start the funding for some of the work for this building, and that we'll be doing a debt project for that here soon. Okay.
You have any idea when we might get another report on those remaining funds?
I will ask for one. I assume you mainly mean CCCC? Or you want a report on all of them? Okay, I can get you that before the next meeting, hopefully.
All right.
Or we'll include it with the next meeting.
Thank you.
When I do my monthly financial report then. Okay, I would like to take the time to acknowledge some people in this. Obviously, our auditors, they've been a great firm to work with, and we've had, over the last 5 years, some challenging new GASB statements that have come out, including some this year that local government commission is usually very, very good about giving us examples, but we had a new one on debt this year. Their example wasn't the best in the world, so we were scrambling to try to make sure we incorporated everything correctly there, and they were of great assistance with that. I also want to commend our county departments. They work great with auditors when they have to, and worked well with getting information that we requested to be able to finalize the audit report. Obviously, have to thank Dr. Crumpton for his ongoing support, and for you guys. I attend a lot of meetings. We've got a great board. Y'all listen usually to Dr. Crumpton and his advice. And there are a lot of places where the boards don't listen and stuff and don't take heed, and then it backfires on some of the staff. So I do want to commend y'all for your excellent guidance and decision making. And then I couldn't do this without my staff. I have a great staff, and I appreciate all they do. That allows me to have the time to be able to write our financials for us. It is something I enjoy doing, and it is something that a lot of counties are now, and cities will be scrambling. The auditors will no longer be able to write the financial statements for their clients. So we're ahead of the game because they no longer do that for us, but I would not have the time to do that if I didn't have the great staff I have, so I want to commend them also. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
It's a good report.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Yes, thank you again for all your hard work. And to reiterate what our guest said, we do understand how fortunate we are. We really do.
We do.
And we appreciate Ms. Minford and her staff. Thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, just presentations all night long.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Dr.
Before I
Brown.
move into the discussion of these projects and how to afford these projects, I do want to commend our department heads on what they do in the budget. About half of the fund balance increase was, from savings in their departments. And unlike other counties, some other counties, we do a zero-based budget every year. So we start from ground zero in each department and build a budget from there and provide the funds that we believe they need to run their department. But during the year, if they can save money, we encourage that savings because we don't want to penalize them. So give you an example, if they had $1 million department and they spend all their money, typically what might happen in other counties is we say, oh, well, we'll just give you a 2 or 3% increase next year. And we don't do that. We say, okay, we're starting back at zero, and we'll see what you need this year. So some departments need more next year. Doesn't mean somebody else may not be able to give up money to help that other department. So we look at it as one big deal, and that's how we save money. And so it's a good program. It takes buy-in from the department heads. It takes a lot of trust. Because there's that inclination to spend all the money. So you hear that all the time in the federal budget, we got to spend all our money or we're going to lose it next year. Well, we don't have that attitude here. We're trying to save money, build the fund balance so we can move and do projects like we're getting ready to talk about. That's how you do it. So I think we have a lot of good things going on. We have a great assistant county manager, finance officer, who watches the pennies like a hawk, and that's what we need. That's what we need. So anyway, it's a good deal. So I'll go ahead and start my presentation. We've done a lot of talking about these two projects, and I just want to make it clear, the proposal as we move forward is, a joint library with the community college and a classroom facility. And that total project is $30 million. I don't know where the $14 million came from recently, but that is a $30 million project, not 14. And the sports complex, if you notice from the numbers I gave you, was actually about $21.5 million, but because of when that report was done, we've upped that to $25 million. So we've had a lot of discussions. Last year, if you remember, in the CIP, we talked about 5 projects. I'll go ahead and pass these out. Remember the CIP you adopted, and at the end of the resolution, it said that y'all would put a priority on the judicial building, multi-sports complex, library, CCCC classroom building, firing range for the sheriff, and the renovations of this facility. So we've tried to address those and how to move forward with that in this presentation. So talk a little bit about major economic development over the last really 18 to 24 months. The first Pfizer, I think people forget about the first win that the county had and the city had with Bamboo Therapeutics being selected to move here to Sanford when Pfizer purchased them instead of New York. That initial investment's $160 million. We also had the Caterpillar expansion out on Highway 421 for $28 million. The recent Pfizer expansion of gene therapy, I put in there $500 million. They have said they're going to be closer to $600 million, but cost and market don't always match, so I was a little conservative on that. And then the recent Barat Forge new facility of $170 million. So my math is not great, but that's $858 million in new investment that's going to be coming on the books. Not to mention anything else that might be coming on the books that we don't know about. So in your book I sent you, there's a financial report from Davenport and Associates. And it is a complicated report. There are a lot of numbers in that. So in my presentation, I've tried to kind of summarize the key things that we tell Davenport to assume when they're doing these reports for us. So our assumption is that our normal annual growth rate for property tax is 1%. As you saw in the presentation, our tax base grew at over 4%. So we're very conservative with that. The next assumption are sales tax revenues at 1%. You heard Ms. Minter gets very nervous when she sees these big jumps in sales tax revenue, and we just got the first quarter report, which is July, August, and September, and for that 3-month period, we had the largest quarter in the history of Lee County, increase of 10%, quarter, year on year. It was actually 10.69 to be exact, which is pretty incredible growth rate. I would never use that as a forecast. So, it was quite, in the budget that we're currently in, we used 4%, and we were struggling to justify that 4%. So we feel pretty good about the first quarter numbers, don't we, Lisa? The library borrowing, as in their plan, it was assumed to occur in fiscal year 21-22. The library borrowing would be a limited obligation bond, total borrowing of $30 million. The sports complex would be a bond referendum on the November 2020 ballot. The borrowing would begin in fiscal year 22-23, and the sports complex borrowing would be $25 million. So in the debt affordability analysis that Davenport did, the analysis actually covers 3 borrowings. You remember, we haven't been in the market yet to do the borrowing for the Project Forge, the joint library, the renovations here and the courthouse, where we're borrowing an extra $3 million on each building. So that borrowing's around $8 million. And so the analysis had to include that borrowing. So then we also added in the joint library classroom project and then the multi-sports complex. The initial analysis was 20-year notes on the library classroom project and the sports complex, 10 years on the economic development, and used a 5% interest rate. So the tax impact in the worst case scenario, alone the economic development project borrowing, there's no impact, tax impact. The library classroom building would be 4.58 cents. However, if the county were to get out ahead, like we did on the Wicker School, where there was a 0 tax rate impact, when we invested essentially 2.38 a tax rate equivalent, we dropped that from 4.58 cents to 2.38 cents. If you do the multi-sports complex, the library, and the ED project, the tax equivalent is 8.84 cents. The complex on its own is 4.28 cents, and that's important because in this analysis, that 4.28 cents is what you would have to tell the voters when you go to the bond referendum. A bond referendum is a pledge from the voters to use the taxing authority of the government to make sure that we pay that bond back. However, if the county implements a 4.8 cent increase in advance, the increase is lowered from 8.84 to that 4.8 cents. So I have some numbers up there, the large $1 million numbers, and those are the total money that would have to be invested for that to be reduced. So ways to reduce the impact. In our financials, we take a certain amount of cents of the total cents that we're taxing, which is 77.5 cents, and apply it towards debt service. And right now that number is 7.61 cents. If we take that equivalent and take it to 12.5 cents, the additional revenue we would need on an annual basis would be $2.845 million. To generate this revenue, we would need new tax base of $370 million. So as I showed you on a previous slide, we were at $858 million, so it's all about timing, when that tax base comes on and when you can afford this without a tax rate increase. So we must tie the borrowings to the tax base increase. May cause a delay for a year or two to make sure the tax base is there. We can also borrow the funds for the Sportsplex in 2 phases. It would be easy to do that project in two sections. And then it's also contingent upon when we borrow the funds. And right now, the average municipal bond is out there at about 3.2% in North Carolina right now, not the 5% that we used in the analysis. So with correct timing of industrial economic growth, the tax rate impact could be 0. The county can further reduce the amount of industrial tax base allocated for debt service and capital reserve by restructuring the economic development debt and paying interest only during the construction period for both projects. This is a scenario that Davenport and Associate showed. I think it was project 1D and 2D. Didn't really like that one because you would pay more interest over the life of the bond. And of course, we're trying to borrow money at the cheapest we can do it and get it paid off as quickly as we can. So didn't really want to stretch out the economic development debt out to 15 years. I would suggest we keep it at 10 and not do the interest only. We did not do interest only on the Wicker School, and we're already into it, paying it back 2 years into it already. So like those scenarios. So I'm sorry those numbers came out so small up there on the screen, but in your books, hopefully we can see that a little bit better. But we were, in the last discussion, we talked about schools and when the schools would be back to us for more borrowing on the schools. A lot of that would have to do with our population growth and our growth of children under the age of 5. And what you see in this chart is you see that our population is going up, but the number of children 5 and under is going down. So, and that's been a trend for about 6 or 7 years. And then when you look at the average daily membership in our schools from 2014 to 2015, and then where the first count was back in September that was posted DPI, we're down over 350 students from 6 years ago. So, of course, we went hunting to find out why those numbers are down. And Mr. Kabaskas was able to show me a declining birth rate in Lee County, which was interesting. So people are having less children. Also, the impact of charter and private schools on attendance and homeschool impact. There was a recent article on WRAL about that impact, and that's actually why Wake County's growth has slowed as well. So, we are getting ready to have another charter school open in Lee County. They have seats for 252 students and already have 250 applications. So people are looking for choice, and they're getting it. And what that does is if we didn't have any other growth residentially in the county, it was just our normal growth rate, we would not see a lot of growth in the schools over the next 10 years. Now, trying to project forward in our growth rate, there's 2 sources that we look at. One is the Office of State Budget and Management, and as we know, they've been a little short for the county on our population historically. So in the year 2020, they're showing our population at 60,793. But, whoops, a little quick on that. If you look at the census forecast, they already had us at 61,450 people in 2018. So in working with Don, we decided to base most of our forecasts off the census forecast and use a growth rate. We use two different growth rates. One was a 1% growth rate over the next 11 years, and the other one was a 1.2%. And you can see we end up pretty close to 70,000 people by the end of the next 10 years. And that's our last 5 years growth rate has been around 1 to 1.2%. That's why we use those numbers. So that gives us a, what we feel is a low end and a high end. And I'm sorry for the people in the audience, but these are the locations of residential developments that have been approved by the city and by the county. And Galvin's Ridge up there around 1,000 housing units is one of the biggest ones. So in totality, there are 2,873 residential units that have been approved, and it's been anticipated from the builders that it would take 6 to 10 years to build all those units. And so I caution to that because this is what's approved. We don't know what's coming down the pipe. We do know that Deep River Forest, which could be anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 residential units, is out there. But there's no indication from them that there's an immediate build there. But so forecasting that population a little bit forward, whoops, I'm a little quick on that button today. So normal growth by 2030, the low end would create an additional, this is using a formula that Don used based on the total population, which is the best indicator of how many children would end up in school, that we would have an additional 1,097 students by 2030, and the high end would be 1,774 students by 2030. And so just using that quick calculation of roughly 600 to 650 students in an elementary school, you come up with the need of 1 to 3 schools by 2030. So, in summary, that's that 1 to 3 schools by 2030, depending upon who moves here, birth rates, all those things can change. I mean, there's obviously some risk there, in our projections. So I caution there, and everything we're doing has risk, is doing projections. If the county increases the tax rate amount assigned to debt service to 12.5 cents, the county would generate the ability to borrow $25 million a year, $25 million every 3 years without raising the tax rate after 2026. And then that shows that in the Davenport report, where it's showing where that increased revenue goes on page 16, if you can read it. It shows you that, how much revenue we're generating every 3 years. So I say that because, the last couple of elementary schools we have built have been in the $25 million range. So, if we're to afford these things, we just have to commit more to the debt service going forward, and that's what you do with the economic development revenues that we're generating. So that's my best forecast.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. We've been over the projects. I will say that, I was asked a couple questions before the meeting. We do have a preferred site for the multi-sports complex, but as everybody knows, we do not have any options on those properties. So, if we move forward, that's one of the first things we need to do. And also then begin analysis of that property or properties and find out where that best location would be.
Any questions?
As far as the site goes, are we gonna look at, you're gonna look at any more sites, or this is the preferred site by the 3 local governments?
Well, I know when we did the study, and that was started 4 years ago, we looked at a number of different sites, and then the consultants came in and did the same thing. Obviously, it would take a large amount of acreage. It's cheaper to find it where it's cleared already, you know, and then location. So there were several sites that were talked about. You know, O.T. Sloan was one of the places that we considered, you know, just to put the type of fields and the number of fields and concessions and restrooms and all that kind of thing. The consultants didn't feel like, and the committee didn't feel like that we had enough space for all the facilities and parking at that location. It also helped that the owner of the site that everybody seems to be focused on is willing to donate a large portion of that track. I met with him last week, and that offer's still on the table. You know, I have a letter from him to that effect, and he's willing to meet with the manager and our attorney and his folks to get something, you know, more official, I guess is the best way to put it.
That reminds me of the car dealership saying, "Come on down, you're at no down payment." Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what that means too. The other thing I would say is, I agreed to this 6 months ago. I don't even remember it.
Oh.
But I'll be voting no from now. When you ask me to agree to something 6 months in advance.
Well, you know, and the sports complex also, you know, I guess that's where we are now. You know, I'm sure everybody here on the board is getting phone calls and talking to people. I ran into somebody at Walmart, and they weighed in. You know, if we are going to put the sports complex on the ballot, we are running out of time for that. I know Commissioner Smith, you know, you mentioned it during your commissioner comments last time, you know, about moving forward on this in some form or fashion. So I personally, I look at it that, you know, if we want to do the sports complex, as far as hearing what the voters want us to do and putting the referendum on the ballot, then we do need to take that vote, what, Dr. Crumpton, mid-January at the latest, but the sooner the better?
Yeah, we need to get with bond council in January.
Okay,
I would
so
say the second meeting in January 21st would be the last day. I think at that point we start running out of time with the votes that you have to take, making sure you have the LGC in place, you know, and what you're doing. There's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of, you know, advanced work for doing the bond referendum and getting information out to the public on what's going on. So we have work to do. We would need to put a budget in to spend a little bit of money on evaluating the site, and but that's really, you know, some of the things we need to do.
Okay.
But the election is less than 12 months away.
Right.
Now.
So there's that issue, and then there's the direction the board wants to go in as far as the library and the Lee Early College.
Let's get the cost figured out on that.
Sure.
I was going to interrupt you a few minutes ago. It was mentioned the $30 million. That includes the CCCC edition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In that project, you have the CCC library at about 17,000 square feet is what they programmed out.
All right.
Our section of the library would be about 35,000 square feet. And then we'd have some shared space between the two libraries, auditorium, meeting rooms, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another addition on where you'll have 12 to 14 classrooms for the Lee Early College. And so you add all that square footage together, it comes up to close to 100,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
100,000 square feet times $300 a square foot, which is what construction is about now. That gets you to 30 million pretty quick.
Yeah.
And the thing with the library project is the site is owned by the community college, and there would have to be some development costs, but you don't have to buy the land. So there are some savings there.
Yeah, I'm just saying if it's 30 million, I can understand how people might come up with 14 or 15
Right.
for the two.
Right.
15.
It's actually sort of three projects when we're talking about the library.
Right.
It's college library, county library, Lee Early College, you know.
And I'm just saying for simplicity,
Sure.
for the public, yeah, you can pretty much say, yes, you can say 10, 10, and 10, or you can say 15, 15. So, but it's 30 million at the end of the day. How much property is being offered for the sports complex? How much would we need and how much?
48 acres donated.
Okay.
The total acreage is 166 acres.
Correct.
For that site?
Yes.
That's available on that.
Oh, excuse me, 133. 133 acres is the Poe property in what's called the Wasara Associates property.
Okay.
And let's see. Thought we put that in there. Let me go to the back here for a second. Maybe we didn't. The I want to say the Wassa site's at 65 acres or 60 acres. So it's almost even.
Which means you get a donated portion and you still have to buy some property.
That's correct.
Okay.
Does the 30 million include, okay, so the 30 million was for the library and
And the Lee Early College.
right.
Mhm.
So, okay, the 25 million for the sports complex, does that include the land we'll have to buy, or is that an addition?
It would have to include, you would include the land purchase in the 25 million.
And, you know, one of the things that I appreciate from Dr. Crumpton and Ms. Venter in putting together the financials for these is, you know, walking us through how we would be able to do these projects without a tax increase, which is doable, thanks to our economic development, you know, growth with these new companies coming in, and the tremendous addition to our tax base over time. And we met with Dr. Chapman and Mr. Philpott and Dr. Bryan and Mr. Kelly from the college and the school system a couple of weeks ago now. I guess time goes by so fast. But we met with them, and Dr. Crumpton walked them through this, not in this much detail, but in that, and I've talked to Ms. List about this too, that, you know, we would take, you know, the next year as sort of planning, which with projects this large, we would need that time to plan. And then as these large projects come online, and Mr. Brown sees them show up on our tax rolls and they're added to our tax base, then that creates that income from those large corporations that will pay for this without a tax increase. But if we do it now, that's not the case. We have to wait for them to come online. Did I explain that right?
Yes, we have to be patient.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
you know.
And then plans change too. Sure. The economy is, Commissioner Smith just said, the economy is booming. At some point, it won't be booming. So you have to be careful. But one of the things that, you know, we should all, I guess, understand from our financial report today is things have changed in
Yes,
the
they
county.
have.
And we're in a different world. I get asked, are we ready for growth? And I would tell you, no, we're not. And probably not in ways that you would think. We don't have really the mentality as a community of what that growth is going to look like, what it's going to take to absorb that growth, and you know, the people that would be coming to town, what are they expecting? You know, we just got through a land use plan, and we've already had some issues where that land use plan that we updated didn't fit what's coming down the pike. So, you know, you have to be flexible, and you have to manage, and you have to be smart. So, and I feel like we have been, you know, for the last few years, but you have to continue to be that way going forward.
More questions?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's not me. Look
Yeah,
at you
well,
guys.
Well, you know, I have to admit, just because you can do something doesn't mean you ought to do it. I can understand being able to afford or to take the risk of doing it now versus later. But personally, I'm more content giving myself a break, waiting for the smoke to clear and see exactly where I am financially at the end of the day. I know that the time seems to be right for everybody that feels that way, and I'm fine with that. But I want to know whether we're going to continue to discuss this matter. And so you ought to take a vote on that or not. Because if it's not going to move, why keep bringing it to the table?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, even I think one of the quotes I read in the paper said, the library and the school expansion is a need and not a desire, not a want. I understand those situations. But to keep confusing the public about we will or won't, we need to make a decision and get on with the county's business. Just where I am.
So, does anybody else have anything they want to say discussion-wise, or would anybody like to make a motion to either table these projects, not do them at all, move forward with one or the other?
Well, one thing I'd like to do real quick before you, if somebody's going to offer a motion, is just look at a couple of these in the last paragraph here on the resolution we adopted. The firing range is on hold, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Judicial building is ongoing, right?
Well, yes, and then eventually we will, you know, at some point in the future, need to build a new one, but we're not at that point yet.
Well, Madam Chair, I propose a motion.
Okay.
I move that the manager and staff prepare for all of those contingencies that need to happen to put the sports complex for a bond referendum for November.
Any discussion on that?
Okay, explain it. What are you instructing them to do?
His motion is for us to move forward with placing the sports complex on the bond referendum for November 2020.
Exactly. And doing all those steps that have to go through the process, the local government and so forth.
Okay.
Okay. I guess it's
Discussion?
off the dime.
Yeah. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we'll move forward on that. And look forward to hearing what the voters have to say. Okay, okay, is there a motion or any more discussion on the Library of Lee Early College project?
Well, that wasn't included?
No, it was not. The sports complex. That's the referendum.
Well, as Commissioner Reeves said, the paper said, sports complex is a want, and the library and the Lee Early College is a need. So, I make a motion that we go forward with that as well.
Any discussion or questions on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a lot of work to do. But that's good, that's good. Thank you. I will say, and thank you for the discussion and the comments, I see you moving here, or Mr. Knowles, no, I didn't mean to shock you. I was just referring to one of your comments. When Mr. Knowles was talking in the public comment section, I move around a lot and talk to a lot of people in the county and crisscross with everything. You're exactly right. I spend a lot of time at the library with being on the library board and working with Miss List and the privilege of working with all of her staff. And I don't get there as often as I want, that's for sure. Nor do I have time to read for fun either lately. But funding is an issue, with just like with the Enrichment Center, which I also am of the age where I can spend time there as well, a lot. And, we're not able to keep that open on Sunday. And, as we grow as a community, and Dr. Crumpton and I have talked a lot about it in projects like this, our citizens want places to go and things to do, just like you said with the Enrichment Center. And much like that, our young people are starting to, find our libraries again. And thanks to a wonderful director that we have, now she's putting on programs and offering things for our young people. And, looking at our deputy here tonight, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot here lately is things for our young people, to get them off the streets, to point them in the right direction, to give them more opportunity, and education type things, but fun things and things they have a choice in. And libraries are seeing a resurgence because they're not just checking out books anymore. They're learning technology. They have computer labs. There are places to go see somebody. We have a person that talks about NASA, because he worked with that program, and people can come and hear the wisdom and the experiences that he has. And it's a community center, not just a library, much like our Enrichment Center is. And I understand too that we need to look at that as well. But sports complexes, libraries, those are things that are good things for our citizens, things for them to do. And as these new families come in, that's what they're looking for. And it says a lot about our community when we invest in education and places where community can gather, like the library, and physical activity where people, kids of all ages can play and get fresh air and be outside. So I'm excited. I mean, this is what we're supposed to do, is grow our community without raising taxes. So that's important. So moving along, I'll get off my soapbox
Before
now.
we move on, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, let me just remind the board that, you know, we had a land gift given some time ago.
We did.
We have not acted on, and at some point in time, it needs to be considered.
Absolutely. And I think, Dr. Crumpton, remind me, the park plans that are hopefully going to be in our hands shortly with O2 Sloan, that land is part of those plans, correct?
No, ma'am.
No.
Not that phase.
Oh, that's in the phase 2.
That's
Okay.
phase 2.
Right, okay. Okay. Good point, Ms. Reeves.
It really raises questions, and I think that we ought to address it sooner rather than later.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, by any means, because this is a big deal for us, I think. Ms. Brown's going to talk to us about strategic planning.
Nothing like a podium to remind you how short you are. Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Crumpton's comments about growth are actually a good segue into the strategic planning discussion. If you recall, your packet includes a memo kind of recalling where we've been in the last 12 months since we brought up strategic planning at the department head, at the board retreat last February. So we are finally at a point where we have a consultant that we've identified that we'd like to move forward with. When we met last February, we talked about the importance of strategic planning for the county in terms of how we provide a framework for discussions going forward to help handle what we're going to do about all the growth coming to Lee County and what that might look like. Since that meeting, department heads have held a retreat. We've completed a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to kind of talk about areas that might be issues of focus or priority for the board to consider when we sit down to do a strategic plan. Once the budget was adopted last June, we did move forward with issuing an RFP for a facilitator to work with the board to develop that basic framework for the strategic plan. We actually encountered a lot of problems finding a facilitator. We went out to bid and we only received 2 responses. After some additional discussion as well about staff capacity to move the strategic planning process forward, we decided we would expand the scope a little bit and actually look for a consultant who could be a little bit more hands-on in helping to move the process forward, not just facilitate board meetings. And so we reissued the RFP in October, and again, struggled to find a number of responses, so we extended that, finally came back with 3 proposals that we considered. Of the 3, only one was really a strong candidate for the role, and that is S-Brand Consulting. They are based out of Colorado. So you have a copy of their proposal in your packet. It details what they would do moving forward, really kind of talking about where we've been as a community, where we're at now, and where we want to go. Really looking at how we would develop a plan around what our priorities are, not just in programs and services we're currently providing and what we're required to provide, but also in some aspirational goals for the county, where we want to be and what we want to look like 5-10 years from now. In addition to that, since then, we did get a copy of their standard contract. Our attorney's office has looked it over, so at the table tonight, you should have a copy of a sample contract. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all have.
I have a question. Will this strategic plan, which I think is a really, really good move forward, will this involve our Board of Education and the city and
yes,
town of Broadway?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So
That's
part of
why
their,
that's why we're choosing this firm, because they have that experience, and also why we decided to let them do a lot of that work instead of us. So we just, but we're busy.
Yeah.
So bringing this firm in to do the whole thing, it also shortens the timeline when we'll have a completed project. And the phone interview, I was very impressed with the
Yes.
owner.
Absolutely.
and we have done some work to identify who those key stakeholders are for the strategic planning effort, and then also for community engagement efforts where we've been talking about pursuing. But yes, and the proposal includes a series of, I think, 8 on-site meetings in the total cost of the proposal, which would include 2 or 3 meetings that would be specifically on-site here in Lee County to meet with key stakeholder groups.
When was the last one we did?
I don't believe the county has ever done a
We did an
comprehensive-
economic strategic plan.
That's what we did.
Yes, but it
Not
did
for
not
the county.
include, everything. It was just
No, I'm just
purely
saying we did
focused on
something like
that.
that, but close to it, but.
That was 5 years ago.
5 years, thank you.
I move to approve.
Okay, any more discussion or questions?
That includes the authorizing the chair to sign the contract that's been handed out.
Just like it stated, yeah. That's good.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I will say, now this means some extra work for us, but it's good extra work for us. I think to Dr. Crumpton's point, and Ms. Brown and I have been working on this some, we are gonna see more growth, and it's gonna come much faster than this community has ever seen before. In talking to counterparts in other counties that have seen rapid growth, like Wake County, Johnston County, that's one of the things I hear is, you're never ready. To Mr. Reeves' point, he keeps asking me, are we ready for this? You're never completely ready, especially if it starts happening very quickly. But having a strategic plan, having that strategic plan to guide us, but also to guide our departments, and it's also a good reference point for people looking at our county to see what we're about and what our priorities are. So I was super impressed with this firm. As I told Ms. Brown, some of the other boards that I work with, not in the county but other places, and some of their strategic plans are nightmares because they're just academic and out there and wordy and just directionless almost sometimes. Just not good strategic plans. And we had some discussion about that with Cheryl, and she walked us through what she was going to do from the beginning to the end, and I think it's very comprehensive. So I think everybody's going to enjoy working with this company. It was just really impressive and good to hear. It was much better than I thought it was going to be when we were talking to them.
Just one thing to highlight, you've already approved it, so, but one of the things that is nice about them is that all of the consultants we'll be working with have practical experience working in county government, whether it's as administrators or as elected officials. So they really seem to understand the group dynamic and what will be involved in the community engagement side, and as well as the elected official side.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was important. I think that's why, it clicked with us, is because they do get it. Okay. Dr. Crockett?
Yes, ma'am. My manager's report, courthouse renovations. I was in communication with Mosley Architects today, and we're going to get our final questions from them on the Register of Deeds building and the historic courthouse. So we expect that to go out to bid right after the first of the year. Pretty excited about to finally get that off the ground. The Withers and Ravenel, we should have final drawings after the first of the year. That's 100% complete drawings, and we'll be out to bid for those projects as well at Horton, O.T. Sloan, Kiwanis Family, and Temple Parks. So some badly needed upgrades at those parks. In other business, your staff will be back at City Hall tomorrow night for more annexation discussions, this time on the Poindexter property, which is also known as Tabitha Lane. The public hearing is set for tomorrow night. So we are required to be there. So we will be there. And the city's moving through the zoning and all those things. I was out at the site today. They are moving dirt and trees as fast as they can to have the site ready to transfer to the company sometime in January. So we're moving towards that, and just let y'all know that. In my report, I also gave you the new state economic development tier rankings. Our ranking did not change. There were some other counties that changed. I was very surprised about. Pitt County becoming a tier 3 county was quite shocking to me, but they were reduced, and so there must be some things going on there to kick that in. But very interesting, the folks that were moving up and down, and we did not change, and being a tier 2 county is probably appropriate for us.
Quick refresher on the tiers, please. Tier 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Tier 1 is, maybe I got it backwards. Pitt County is now a tier 1 county, excuse me. And so tier 1 is the most economically disadvantaged counties, so they get more help from the Department of Commerce. Their JDIG is worth 2 to 3 times what JDIG would be worth in Lee County. And then the tier 3 counties are the Mecklenburgs of the world. So
Big dogs.
Big dogs.
New Hanover, Bunker.
Yes, about the top 20 in population, which is what makes the Pitt County reduction from a tier 2 to tier 3 so amazing. So very interesting. We are proposing that the Commissioner's Budget Retreat, which is also known as our Budget Kickoff Meeting, to be on January 30th and 31st. We were going to try to do it the week before, but Saga planned their all boards meeting on the 23rd, and the NAI Carolina Conference at the PNC Arena is on the 22nd. So a lot of folks go to those 2 meetings, and we're supposed to be at the Saga meeting, so we are proposing to push that back to the 30th and 31st.
How does that sound to everybody with their schedule?
I'll be absent on the 30th.
Kirk, if it helps, typically we just have dinner that night and then the retreat all day. Would that help?
Well, I should be here. I can make it in the evening, yeah.
Isn't that what we discussed? We
normally have a program at dinner where we're talking about an issue, but it's not one of those issues that we couldn't discuss again on Friday as well. So Friday we
The 30th and the 31st
we have a
of
pretty
January?
busy schedule for
Thursday and Friday. So is that okay? Thursday evening and then Friday from, usually we do what, 9 to 2 or 9 to 3, something like that?
9 to 2.
9 to 2? How about 10 to 3?
About 10 to 2.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
I'll take the 9 to 2.
Okay,
We'll make it
yes, sir,
work.
okay. All right.
So I've already mentioned the NAI Carolina Conference. Y'all should get invitations to that, and of course you're going to get an invitation, if you haven't already, to the Saga All Boards meeting on the 23rd. Location and time I don't have yet, but normally that's a 6 or 7 o'clock meeting. So just remind everybody that the offices will be closed next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for Christmas. I hope everybody has a great holiday next week. And then we'll also be closed on January 1st for the New Year's holiday. And our next commissioners meeting will be on the 6th. And remind the board that we will not be meeting on Monday the 20th. That is Martin Luther King's Day. The offices are closed. So it's been our tradition to meet on Tuesday the 21st at 6 o'clock. So busy couple of weeks there at the end of January.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner comments, Mr. Reeves?
Merry Christmas to everyone, Happy New Year and all that good stuff. And more sincerely, thank you for the job that Lee County staff does for this county. It means a lot, a whole lot, more than you realize. Thank you so much.
Yes, very good. Well, a couple things to report. The Johnson Lee Harnett Community Action Board met, the Director Board met, and one thing that I wanted to bring to all of our attention to kind of expect in the next coming meetings, there are two programs. There's Head Start and Early Head Start. They are currently separate programs that each receive funding, but the board is kind of limited, well, they are limited in how they can use those funds. If there's a need in the Early Head Start, they can't move a line item. Exactly. And so they're left kind of struggling to meet certain needs. So they came before the directors and asked if they would approve to merge those two. The needs would still be met and everything would stay the same other than just allowing for spreading of the funding. So that was passed unanimously. So they'll come before our board, but I just wanted to give a heads up on that, and that we'll hopefully approve that. And secondly, the JCPC board met, and with our board had talked a lot about Raise the Age and the different implications of that, and they did receive some additional funding of about $28,000, and so there's no expectation of county match, but that just allows them to implement it into some of the programs. So that was good. And then, of course, we're excited for the Lee County Jackets. They are winners to us, so we're proud of them.
Absolutely.
Hope everyone has a safe and joyous Christmas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Adding to Commissioner Del Plazo's Johnson Lee Harnett Community Action Meeting, Jerry Lamont, one of our Lee County people, he's been on that board for 20 years.
Wow.
And this is his last, that was his last meeting,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he gave a generous donation of $1,000.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Good for him. Good for him.
Second thing, Saturday, I hadn't seen Lee County come together as big as it did with the group going up to Carter Finley Stadium since I think the tornado back in 2011 when everybody came together as a county. But it was neat. The Sheriff's Department had a car leading the highway patrol and 5 buses and vans and the Lee County fans had the whole bottom section, for the most part, filled at Carter Finley Stadium. It was,
Yeah.
I seen people in their Letterman's jackets from 30 years ago. I mean, they couldn't come close to getting them buttoned up. They had them on.
They had them on,
They had
yeah.
'em on.
Cheerleaders too?
Cheerleaders, same way. But it was an awesome deal. The score was not indicative of how close the game was, but we appreciate everybody supporting the effort.
It's Merry Christmas, happy and safe holidays and New Year, and I hope our commissioner does well.
Yes.
So we'll keep him in our prayers. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Sand Hill Center, the Ashboro facility's opening has been delayed still. Hopefully January, the DHHS final inspection, and we'll get that online so that our sheriff's department doesn't have to commute to the northern part of the state. They can go down the road a piece. The bridge at North Carolina 42 in Deep River, we were told in the TARPO meeting before Christmas it will be open.
I will believe it when I see it.
Well, that's always the thing, but
But I'm hopeful.
just passing on what is shared.
No, it wasn't.
Tell you
Looks
that.
like it's got a ways to go.
And wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I concur with Commissioner Reeves' comments on the staff. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next year.
Yeah. Well, again, one thing I'm grateful for this holiday season and is a gift every day, like they say, is our great staff. And also our great board. You know, we agree most of the time more than we disagree. If you look at our votes, and it is a pleasure to work with everybody. And I think we have had a really good year. We've had some challenging times here and there, but overall it's been a really good year. And I look forward to next year. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think Ms. Brown's going to get us going on the strategic plan, and we're going to, I think, have some more announcements as far as economic development is concerned, and we're going to get started on these projects with parks and this building and the courthouse, and so there's a lot of activity, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because there's a lot of counties, a lot of places that don't have all of this activity and all these good things going on, and the ability to afford to do what we can do for our citizens. So that's a blessing. I just hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas and New Year. This year has gone by so fast. But just hope everybody has a safe one. And again, I was honored to be at the Carter Finley Stadium on Saturday. It was freezing, but our young men played well, and I was really proud of them. And it was great to see all the Lee County citizens support them. Those Weddington kids just didn't have the backing that our guys did. They didn't show up like Lee County did, but you know, that's what we know. Lee County always shows up, so I'm proud to be part of it. So with that, entertain a motion
So moved.
to adjourn. All right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Everybody have happy holidays. Be safe.